Please supervise.
Let's ride.
Thank you.
This is jumping.
Oh! Here we go! Enjoy your day.
Great. Real good. Not getting teary at all. Wouldn't catch me on that. See you later. Nothing to running violently to that.
Do you like intense roller coasters? No? How about tame roller coasters? Or forget roller coasters, how about dark rides? Shows, parades, fireworks, light shows, screen rides, ice cream, art, food, comedy, animals, Star Wars, dinosaurs, safaris, aliens, superheroes, animation, the Old West, storytelling, lightning storms, the future, wizards? Well, whatever your heart desires, I can promise you, you will find it here. In Florida. Yeah, believe it or not, there's an actual reason to visit this state. It's there, I swear, and it only costs an arm and a leg to get there. But believe me, it's worth it. You'll have the absolute time of your life here. And sunburn. A lot of sunburn. Now, my friend and I had been planning this trip for a very long time. You may have heard of him. His name is Joe Vevers. He does a lot of Doctor Who parody videos. I mean, who can forget such classics like Bitch Fight of Canary Wharf or PeakerMercury.mp4? Yeah, that's right. I'm friends with the man who made that meme. And let me tell you, what a guy. Anyway, we met in college and we found we had similar interests. And more importantly, we both had just the right amount of stupidity to spend large amounts of money on something dumb. Achieving our dreams and going to Disney World and Universal Studios. Now back then, we were young and we had lots of time in our hands, so we figured we could go to Florida whenever we wanted. That was 8 years ago. So we met up and decided to actually start planning this trip and go. Because we knew if we didn't do it now, we never would. Fast forward to 9 months later and we were at the hotel, ready to fly the very next day. We couldn't believe it. We were ecstatic. The hotel was nice, even for a Holiday Inn, which in the past I've not had the best experience with. We parked my car in the airport parking for 2 weeks. Goodbye, Selena. And the next thing we knew, we were flying. On our way to London Gatwick Airport, because that's where our connecting flight was leaving from. And then, once again, we were flying. Off to Orlando. And to celebrate this wonderful feat, we decided to watch a small-budget indie film in the plane journey. The plane had the perfect selection of films for Universal. The Mummy, Men in Black, The Simpsons movie, and all the Harry Potters. That, plus a couple of games of Monopoly, all helped pass the time tremendously. And before we knew it, we had landed. And I wanted to take this moment to say just how amazing Orlando Airport looks. Just have a look at all that space.
Look at all this more space.
So
We
much,
do aerobics in here.
so many activities.
So we went to collect our bags. Joe got both of his, but I only got one of mine. British Airways, you see, had decided to leave my smaller bag back at Gatwick Airport. But anywho, I was informed the bag would be sent over the next flight and it would be delivered to the Airbnb we were staying at. And you might be asking yourselves, Nick, why did the two of you need a big case, a cabin bag, and a rucksack for a 2-week holiday when there were only 2 of you? Well, I only have one word to say to you. Merchandise. We both knew we were going to be buying lots of pointless stuff over there. This entire holiday was essentially going to be one big, glorified shopping trip. And as God is my witness, we needed plenty of bags to haul it all back home. So, despite the delayed bag situation, we made it through airport security and went to pick up our rental car. Now, I was told by the car company we were getting a Kia Rio or similar. So, naturally, that's what I was expecting. Imagine my surprise when I got to pick out a Toyota Prius. Now, I know next to nothing about cars, but if I were to take an idiot's guess here, and I am an idiot, I would say there's quite a substantial difference between these two cars. But that's just me. Definitely no complaints. I was very happy driving this car. It was so smooth. I did feel a bit guilty driving it though, as it was quite the upgrade from my own Toyota Aygo back at home. All alone in that airport car park for 2 weeks. Anyway, we drove off to find the Airbnb. Now, I thought this was going to be the most difficult part of the holiday for 2 reasons. Number 1, I've always driven a manual car, and I've only practiced driving an automatic a handful of times.
The letters stand for park, reverse, neutral, drive, and low.
And number 2, I've never driven on the right side of the road before, so I was a nervous wreck when we first pulled out of the airport.
First Florida drive. Nick's acing it.
Thank you.
With no help from me whatsoever. We're going straight.
I'd adjusted a lot easier than I thought I would, which was great, and I gotta say, I really enjoyed my time driving in America. There was barely any traffic at all throughout the entire trip, and I got to turn right at traffic lights even though the lights were still red. Why, I'd never experienced a power rush quite like it. It was a breath of fresh air compared to driving back in Edinburgh, and most importantly, there was not a roundabout in sight. Just straight, simple roads. I couldn't have asked for anything better. And on top of that, the car was really nice too. We drove for about half an hour, and with the power of Google Maps, we were able to find the Airbnb. And I must say, it was beautiful. Now, if you're worried about being spoiled about a specific ride, don't worry. I've taken the time to split this video into different sections so you can pause and then skip ahead to the next chapter down in the comment section below. But enough about that. Enough about lost bags and nice cars and wonderful views. You all came here for one reason, and one reason only. The same as we did.
I think that's the Tron right there, that white building, isn't it?
Gateway to the 16 lands of the Magic Kingdom. Smoking is not permitted in Magic Kingdom, except in the designated area outside the park entrance. If you're standing, please Magic Kingdom monorail.
Magical. The Magic Kingdom. I find it suitable to always start with this park in the holiday. There is a certain magic with this park, and it's not just the turkey legs. The atmosphere when walking down Main Street is something I can't quite put into words. And I find when you can't put a joyous feeling into words, it simply means the feeling is magical.
Do you want to do a proposal just for fun?
But we had no time for magic. We had a mission. You see, earlier that morning, Joe and I had managed to join the virtual queue for the brand new ride Tron, and we were told to board it first thing in the morning. So we marched ourselves straight over to Tomorrowland, and for my first impressions, this was a really unique looking ride. I don't know what it is about this giant canopy, it's just really pleasing to look at. So we joined the queue, nice and easy, and I don't remember having to wait that long. It must have been 20 minutes at most, which is an excellent wait time for a brand new roller coaster. And I must say, besides the whole waking up before 7 AM and spam pressing the join button to fight over a spot amongst thousands of other people all doing the exact same thing, I really do like the virtual queue feature for the newest attractions. As long as you have the app open before 7 o'clock and start frantically throwing your finger at the screen, you're pretty much guaranteed a spot in the queue. Even more so if there are multiple people in your party all doing the exact same thing. It just helps avoid waiting in what would most likely be a 2-hour-long queue, and instead turns it into a 20-minute queue. The downside to this is you only get to join the queue once for the whole day. This means once you've had a go on Tron, you won't be able to go on it again until you return another day. So the main question is, was Tron worth it? Hell yes it was. That first launch at the start makes you feel like you left your soul behind. And as you can see, it took us both by surprise. I don't know why, I just wasn't expecting it to be that fast. And it was. And it was great. After the launch, it takes you outside where you get to see all the peasants without motorcycles down on the ground below you. Then it takes you back inside where there are lots of cool Tron lighting effects with fast twists and turns. The ride doesn't last too long, but again, because we only waited around 20 minutes or so, it felt like a great payoff. So, my recommendation is to ride it now whilst it still has the virtual queue system in place. Because once they take that down for it to become a free-for-all, the queue times will reach over an hour, and I can't say it will be nearly as worth it. Still a fun ride, and definitely one of the Magic Kingdom's best, but you may feel the experience is over too quickly after waiting for ages in line. So in short, yes, highly recommend it. After Tron, we decided to have an early lunch and walked over to the lunching pad. Haha! And I believe I got a Cuban hot dog and noticed on the menu it came with chips. Now, if you're British like me, you'll understand I was expecting these. Instead, I was given these, and quickly remembered what country I was in, and cursed my own foolishness. As we had started with Tron, something fairly fast-paced, we figured we would go on to something a bit more tame next. And so we headed on to Adventureland, where we joined the Jungle Cruise. This is the ride where you get to hop on a boat and explore the jungle river, where you'll encounter monkeys, elephants, and temple treasure. And they were never seen again.
We're going to begin our cruise here in the Amazon rainforest where it rains 365 days a year. Except today. I guess we just missed it today. I'm here messed up. The weather's too messed. I told you to stay on that box. Is that the map you're using? Yeah, that's a Disneyland map. It's California Jungle Cruise. You got... Oh, I know that's a hell of a party, but that's a clock. You know, I wish I had a memory like an owl that didn't really know out with the job. In there. Oh, that's close. Alright, we're gonna sneak by while Dave reloads.
Now, whilst I do enjoy this ride, I have always felt a bit silly going on the Jungle Cruise. The reason being is that Disney has another theme park literally down the road with real monkeys and real elephants and lots of other real animals. You'll have fun on the Jungle Cruise, the animatronic animals are interesting in their own way, and you get to listen to all the bad jokes the tour guide makes. I personally wouldn't queue for more than 25 minutes for this ride, but seeing as this is the Magic Kingdom, it's likely it's never going to be that short of a wait. There's not a whole lot to do or look at in the queue, but it does move at a decent pace so you're not standing around in one place for too long. You're not going to find a lot of thrill rides here in the Magic Kingdom. You come to Disney for the vibes, and the Jungle Cruise brings jungle vibes, and they're always welcome. Now, after witnessing apes wrecking boats, elephants splashing water, and exploring an ancient temple with a golden snake, we decided to head over to the other boat ride in Adventureland, Pirates of the Caribbean. Another rather tame attraction. The biggest thrill you can expect is the vertical drop in the dark near the start. Other than that, the rest of the boat ride is a relatively calm sail right through the middle of a pirate invasion. I had forgotten just how immersive this ride was, and what I'm mainly referring to is the sky effect. The animatronics still hold up, and as far as I could tell, they were all still working. And for a ride this old, that's pretty good going. It could have maybe done with a second vertical drop towards the end, but overall, it's a fun, tame boat ride that keeps you entertained the whole way through. I found the queue moved at a very slow pace for pirates, and it's definitely one of the windier queues that makes you feel you're not getting anywhere fast.
I'll say. He's got that right.
I'd say I'd wait no more than 25 minutes tops for this ride, but again, that's wishful thinking here in the Magic Kingdom. And so it was time to move on from Adventureland and onto Frontierland, where it was time to ride Big Thunder Mountain! And we walked right past it because the queue for Haunted Mansion was much shorter. The Haunted Mansion is a good time. It's a spooky time. A lot of really good effects like the ghosts dancing and flying out of their graves and the flashing lights and the skeletons. But still no sign of the Mad Hatter. Here's my thing with these supposedly scary rides. Haunted Mansion isn't necessarily scary unless you're a toddler and you don't understand why all these ghosts are getting all up in your business. I'm going off the rails here, but take the dungeons, for example. Once you've been to one, you've been to them all. And they're not all that scary. Instead, they focus a lot more on the comedy aspect, which is what I feel they always do with these haunted house types of attractions. I don't know, at least all the ones I've been to. The only one that comes to mind that doesn't is the Haunted Manor at Alton Towers. There's no comedy to be found in that. Just a scary haunted dead girl trying to kill you. Now that's what I'm talking about. Not that I think the Haunted Mansion should be more scary. We are in Disney World after all. I like the Haunted Mansion as it is, but, you know, I just want a decent scare every now and then. I want to be spooked. The queue for this ride is surprisingly mostly outside for some reason. I really feel they underutilized the mansion. They could have had this whole inside show building for the queue. You do go inside the mansion towards the end and get to go in this pre-show elevator, which was pretty good. But there is still a lot of standing outside with not much to keep your attention. It is an old ride, so that is to be expected with these types of queues, I suppose. I'd again say wait no more than 25 minutes for this attraction, and whilst the outside parts of the queue are shaded, do bring lots of water, because without having to state the obvious too much, it is hot. It is so freaking hot here. There are multiple water filling stations around the park, but not as many as we thought there was, so make sure to refill your water bottles every chance you get. Oh, yes! Now, whilst the Haunted Mansion has its fair share of scares, the next ride we went on was perhaps the scariest ride of all. I don't take It's a Small World lightly. We went on it because it was nearby the Haunted Mansion, and Big Thunder Mountain! Still had a long queue time, and I don't know why I've always felt compelled to go on this ride. It's almost like a spell taking over my body. It's like the trip doesn't feel complete unless I ride it. My soul starts to feel empty, like a bottomless chasm into the depths of what it truly means to be human. And in this chasm, it just swirls round and round, in complete and utter despair and loneliness. So we noticed the queue for Big Thunder Mountain had gone down and decided to head back over to Frontierland. And whilst we were on our way there, we noticed this big-ass boat just sailing about. And I think that's just swell. Here you are, minding your own business, and there goes this ferry boat just carrying a whole bunch of guests going on their own adventure in the park. Not necessarily for us thrill seekers, but very much appreciated and adds to the whole magical vibe of the park. Look at them birds.
I prefer the bus personally.
And so we finally made our way back to Frontierland to ride... This ride is an old classic. It's not massive in terms of thrills, but it's fast enough for what it is, and it's got great theming.
Stop it. The money shot's coming.
I am the money shot.
It's another ride you feel like you're on for a good chunk of time. It lasts for 3 minutes and 25 seconds, which is a great time for a coaster ride. The queue moves pretty fast and is also well themed. It all looks and feels great, considering that this is another one of Disney World's oldest attractions. I would happily wait in line for 30 minutes for this ride. A fast moving queue with lots to look at helps the time fly by, and especially when the coaster lasts for nearly 3.5 minutes.
Robert, it goes down. It goes back.
After Big Thunder Mountain, we noticed the Walt Disney train was pulling into the nearby station. That's right, a goddamn train. A ferry and a train in a theme park that can take you to the other side of the theme park. Mental, I know. So we boarded onto the train, because who the heck wouldn't, and we rode it all the way back over to Tomorrowland so we could ride the second mountain of the Magic Kingdom. Space. The Mountain of Space. Which is very contradictory, by the by, because I feel there is rather a lack of space in this ride. For starters, you can't see shit, and despite that, I had this unnerving feeling that if I put my arms up, they were going to be dismembered. Because you can't see where you're going in this ride, it actually helps add to the thrill of it, as you can't tell where all the sudden drops, twists, and turns are. It also, again, has a pretty decent ride time of 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Why, I felt like I was in space for around 2 whole minutes. It was great. What would have been a lot cooler is if they added small but bright lights to make the stars shine more and add more to the immersion, because without them, it mainly feels like you're riding in a massive dark pit of despair with all the distant screaming you can hear from other riders. Turns out that in space, everyone can hear you scream.
Space. That's a bit rough on the old spine, I would say.
Nothing like a good old rickety-clackety. Hey, don't distract me doing his job.
Cheers, mate. Thanks for a good ride.
It's a lot more cheery after.
I know.
You're in space. It's the Mars rover.
Oh, I get it. All good stuff. I feel this maybe should have been in the queue line on the way to the ride.
Whilst it's for sure an old ride, it still holds up pretty well. But it is in need of an overhaul. Much more so than the third mountain of the Magic Kingdom needed. Yes, I'm sad to say that Splash Mountain was closed during our visit, with its current major transformation into Tiana's Bayou... The Princess and the Frog. It was a major blow to my heart, as Splash Mountain was my favourite ride in the Magic Kingdom, and I'm sad to see it go. I get it, you know, racism is bad and all, but man, I just wanted to ride this. Now I have to wait for the next time I spend my entire life savings to come back. And there will be a next. Next up in Tomorrowland, we queued for about half an hour for the Buzz Lightyear attraction. A nice fun little shooting game where you slowly go around shooting all the Z's to get points. And because points were involved, I got a little over-competitive. And Joe got a little too excited and trigger-happy once he realised he could spin our cart around with the joystick. I will say, the queue for this ride sucks. You're outside for most of it, and inside is not much better. There is a Buzz Lightyear animatronic giving you a briefing once you're inside, but other than that, it just sucks. And this ride's queue can easily reach over an hour's wait time. In my opinion, unless you have kids, it's just not worth it. Heck, even with kids, because you're outside in the heat for the majority of this queue with nothing to look at and nothing to do, kids are more likely to get very bored very quickly. So, if you're lucky and you see the queue for this ride at 20 minutes or less, I would say join it. Any more than that, and I would say you're better off spending your time joining the queue for other rides. But moving on to one of the main attractions of Tomorrowland, the People Mover. Ah, the sweet, relaxing People Mover. When you get to sit back and admire the views of Tomorrowland from up high.
This is the TTA Blue Line, non-stop service around Tomorrowland. Greetings, intergalactic travelers. Welcome aboard the People Mover, presented by Enterprise. Did you know Progress City inspired Epcot? And a lot of the visionary ideas throughout Walt Disney World. Look, there's even a tiny People Mover.
I really enjoy this ride because it takes you all around Tomorrowland, including inside Space Mountain. That's right, back into the pit of absolute darkness. You literally just sit in darkness for about a minute before you come out the other end. And you even get to go through some of the shops and watch the people shopping. It's just a nice little fun ride to take a break from all the walking and chill out on.
Attention travelers, your journey has been temporarily delayed.
Damn it.
We then noticed that the next showing of Carousel of Progress was about to start, and so we joined the queue, and it's exactly as I remember it. And I'm so happy it is, because oh man, what a show. For those of you who haven't seen it, it takes you through the different stages of progress over time and shows how the average American family lived through each era with advancing technologies improving our quality of life. But that's not why you should visit this attraction. The main reason you come to this show is for their major hit song that is now permanently stuck in my head for the perceivable future.
It's a dream come true for you and me, just a dream away. And speaking of progress, there's a great big beautiful tomorrow. And when it becomes a reality, let's cheer up Sarah by singing our song. Come on, everybody. There's a great big beautiful tomorrow. shining at the end of every day.
And when it becomes a reality,
it's a dream come true for you and me.
There's a great big beautiful tomorrow.
Excluding some of the dark rides like Winnie the Pooh, Ariel, and Peter Pan, which during the time we were there always had about an hour-long queue, the last ride we wanted to get on before park closing was the 7 Dwarfs Mine train. It looked quite similar to Big Thunder Mountain, but it always had about a 60 to 70 minute queue. So, using logic, I figured it must be better than Thunder Mountain in some way. As you can tell from my ride photo, I was wrong. Or at least it didn't justify the 70-minute long queue for me. A big reason for the significantly longer queue will be because it's one of the newer rides at the Magic Kingdom. It wasn't a bad ride, it just felt like it was missing something. It felt a bit plain, a bit average. The trees and rocks looked nice, but I think it needed a bit more, Snow White and the 7 Dwarves vibes. Because besides the scene in the mine and at the very end with the house, the rest of it just kind of feels ordinary. Like it literally could have been any ride. They could have called it Pirates of the Caribbean. And I'd be like, well, where are the pirates? But instead, they called it the 7 Dwarfs Mine Train. So I was like, where are the dwarves? I could be nitpicking here, but I feel those dwarves should have been all over that mountain. There were a few interesting elements in the queue, like the glowing gemstones and the spinning barrels projecting the 7 dwarves in the cave ceiling, was a really nice idea. But this queue moved very slow, and whilst it was relatively well themed, it didn't move nearly fast enough to keep our attention. So we were pretty bored for almost the full hour we were in the queue for. I would say wait no more than 35 minutes for this attraction, but you are never going to see this queue drop to that time. So, in the meantime, make sure you bring some snacks for the wait. Because we had waited over an hour for the ride, by the time we came off it, it was nearly 9 PM. And you know what that means. Fireworks. As the sky got darker, the rest of the park began to light up, including the castle, which looked great. Joe and I found a place to stand and watch, and soon after, the fireworks started. And we watched. And then we decided to head home halfway through. Don't get me wrong, it's a really well done show, but like I've said earlier, we're thrill seekers. So after the first batch of fireworks went off, we were fairly satisfied with what we saw, and we were ready to head back to the Airbnb. But by the time we reached Main Street, something compelled us to look back again at the show, and what we saw was magical. More fireworks. And then we left again. It's a great show, but it was time for us to get the heck on out of there. Because tomorrow, we had an entirely new theme park to explore. Somebody check his pulse.
Buses! There's not even an animal on the sign. Disney's Animal House.
Oh, youth.
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 How dare you? How dare you?
You fuck! How dare you? How dare you? Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy! I was excited about this park. There were two big reasons why I was very happy to return back to the Animal Kingdom. Number one, this park is some of my favourite Disney rides. And number two, the new alien land of Pandora was not there the last time I was here. And I had managed to keep myself relatively spoiler-free, so I didn't know exactly what to expect from the rides or the land itself. On entering the park, I was instantly hit with a wave of nostalgia.
Oh, bubbles again. It's always with the bubbles.
Jurassic Park. Whoa, it's wobbly. Neck and neck.
Oh.
Tree of life.
I love this park. It is easily one of my favorite Disney parks. You see, Magic Kingdom has distinct lands that feel different from one another, whilst all the lands in this park feel a lot more connected as they have a very similar atmosphere. Being surrounded by trees all the time really helps with keeping the theming consistent, as well as the central piece of Animal Kingdom, the Tree of Life. Just look at the fucking size of the thing. And as an added bonus, the Florida weather also ties in really well with this park. But enough of that. We headed straight over to Pandora. We had blue monkeys to see. Welcome to the Valley of Moana. Now, I'm not going to talk in this next part. Instead, I'm going to let the footage speak for itself. Just look at this place.
So cool. Next to me. Waterfall. Water fun. Come on. Water fun. Come on! That was the whole bit. That was it.
Look at it! Look at it! How amazing is this? Why, this is by far the best themed land I've ever been to. Even just walking through the queue for Flight of Passage. Look at the queue! This queue has no business being this well themed. And what you're seeing here is only the start. This line looks like it was designed to hold a 2-hour-long queue, and it's all themed. That's bananas. Wait, no, that's not what these guys eat. That's Yovo fruit. We caught up to the start of the queue inside the cave, and the queue time said it was roughly an hour long, but we were willing to wait. Now, I'm relatively a patient man when it comes to waiting in line for something, but this highly depends on what it is I'm waiting for and how fast the queue itself is moving. Even if it still takes an hour, as long as the queue is moving, it helps time pass by quicker. And because I had no idea what Flight of Passage was, my anticipation quickly started to grow. The mystery of this ride made it easier to wait in line, but the queue moved at a pretty good pace, so we never stayed in one part of the queue for too long. And because there was lots to look at, we were relatively entertained the whole way through.
The unobtainium.
Just behind that door.
It's almost obtainable.
He's eating things. That's really cool.
Oh, yes.
However, the queue is one thing. What was the ride like? My guess is that it was a dark ride of some sort. But after watching the pre-show, we were given 3D glasses and told to sit on the seats in front of a wall. Ah, a screen ride. Great. I wasn't disappointed yet because the seats we were sitting on were designed in a weird way where it gave you the impression you were going to be riding something. It was so far not like any other screen ride I had been on before. This was definitely different. But was it going to be any good? The small screen in my seat started doing stuff which encouraged you to look down at it, which cleverly distracted you from seeing the wall open up in front of you, revealing the big screen. And then the machine transported your consciousness into your linked Navi. And then you were there, high up in the trees in the world of Pandora. Now, here's the tricky part. I don't know if I can manage to come up with the words to describe just how bloody good this ride is. It's a screen ride, so by default, it should be relatively underwhelming. But it's not, because the seat you're sitting on moves and has vibrations that emulate a living ecran. That's these flying things from the film, and make it feel like you're flying through the air. It is a 3D flying simulator. The screen in front of you takes up your entire vision, so you can't see the edges, which is usually a fault of screen rides as it ruins your immersion. The sound, the music, the screen, the 3D elements of the technology of the seat all work together to add to one hell of an immersive experience. And if I'm not crazy, I'm pretty sure there were distinctive smells that were released at certain times, and if there wasn't, then my mind made it up. And the whole experience lasted a long time too. 4 minutes and 24 seconds. This is easily the best screen ride out there. Nothing comes close to it, I'm telling you. And if any theme park company is thinking about doing a screen ride in the future, they should use this as a starting point. Because generally, screen rides suck. They're not all that immersive, they can cause motion sickness, and they're usually a big indicator that the company decided to cheap out on spending too much money on the ride. Because screens are much easier to maintain and are cheaper to make than roller coasters and dark rides. And we'll be mentioning some big disappointments with screen rides later. But this ain't one of them. 10 blue monkeys out of 10. For a screen ride, as a 3D flying simulator, it knocks it out of the park. And it has a well-themed, fast-paced, interesting queue to back it up. And hopefully should set an example of what screen ride experiences should be like. Both Joe and I were so impressed with how this ride was done, our expectations were immediately set on the second ride of this land, the Navi River Journey. At the time we went, Flight of Passage usually had a 60 to 80 minute queue, sometimes 2 hours long. The Navi River Journey, however, was usually around 40 to 60 minutes, and at its peak times was around 80 minutes. Still a pretty high demand, so it must be good. So we were excited to see what the second ride had to offer. Why, I was even excited to see the queue. I couldn't wait to see all the great theming that was put into, okay, a relatively basic windy queue, but we luckily joined when it was only 40 minutes long, so hopefully this was just the start of the queue and there was a lot more theming inside. 20 minutes later and we were still winding. It started to become clear that this was the vast majority of the queue, and it was slow. Very slow. And towards the end, I found out exactly why it was so slow. The park attendant, who was in charge of managing the Lightning Lane queue, where it joined near the end of the standard queue, was letting in, and I'm not kidding when I say this, was letting in one standard queue rider through for every 10 Lightning Lane queue riders. Now, I understand it's important to make sure the Lightning Lane queue that people have paid money for keeps moving. The problem we had was that we could see that there was no queue for the Lightning Lane. The park attendant was waiting for Lightning Lane riders to join the queue and then would let them right in. And only when enough Lightning Lane users had shown up would they then let the standard queue through. Now, like I said, I'm normally a patient person, especially when the queue is well themed. It's interesting to look at and the queue is moving at a good pace. There is a large difference between moving in a queue for 40 minutes and standing still in a queue for 40 minutes. Whilst you still waited in a queue for 40 minutes either way, one feels significantly faster than the other. And on top of that, to watch people immediately skip the queue and to be let on over and over and over and over and over and over and over again before your queue is even allowed to move is incredibly infuriating. During our time at the parks, I don't think I saw this occur on any of the other rides we went on. Every other ride seemed to split this up relatively 50-50, or at least it seemed so. This was by far the worst queue we had gone on in the entire trip. But so what? A bad queue can easily be made up with a great ride. So, what was the Navi River Journey like? It was alright. As we had summarized from its name, it was a boat ride. And it was well made and pretty immersive. The animatronic of the Navi at the end was really impressive. But, having just waited in a long, infuriating queue that wasn't moving, and whilst watching another queue that was empty half the time being given a much higher than necessary priority over your queue, all prior to riding this boat ride, we were expecting a little bit more. Or at least for it to have lasted a lot longer than it did. I'm willing to go on record here and say that this ride is not worth riding at all, unless the queue is 20 minutes or less. And even then, I don't know if I would ride it again unless it was an instant hop-on. 4 blue monkeys out of 10. The ride is well themed, but it's far too short. As a calm, relaxing boat ride, it's nice, but the bad queue lets it down for sure. Oh, and also, just as a side note, if you're one of the few people that's taken my rating seriously, don't. I don't really have a point system going on here. I'm mostly basing this all on pure, raw, human emotion that I felt at the time. Just as God intended.
Water. Bug.
However, I wasn't going to let this sour my experience of Pandora. It's a fantastic land, and its main attraction is outstanding. I was thoroughly impressed. But now, I had a strange craving for dinosaurs. And there was only one place to go to fill that craving. Dinoland! No, not that part of Dinoland. This part. The Dinosaur Dark Ride. I was 11 years old when I first experienced this ride, and I distinctly remember trying my best to hold myself together, both physically and emotionally. Any of you who have been on this ride before will know exactly what I mean. It is deceitfully terrifying. On the outside, it looks like a fun little dinosaur ride where you get to go and see your favorite characters from the film Dinosaur. On the inside, it takes the name Dark Ride seriously. You are thrown into darkness with dimly lit giant dinosaur animatronics coming at you from all angles. And I do mean thrown. The ride tosses you from side to side as it hurls you through time, driving recklessly through the Cretaceous period, looking for an iguanodon for reasons I cannot justify, all whilst avoiding dangerous carnotaurs that are chasing after you, whilst the meteor shower that ended most life on Earth rains fire upon you. As you can see, 26-year-old me fared just about as well as 11-year-old me did. This ride is intense. So, naturally, we went on it as many times as we could during the trip. Whenever we noticed the queue time had gone down to about 15 to 20 minutes, we hopped on. This is easily my favorite dark ride. It's fast and intense, and the dark environment helps hide some of its flaws. Like recently, I noticed some of the animatronics are no longer working and are now completely static, which is a shame as you can tell the ride is becoming quite old, but the darkness helps to not draw too much attention to it. And it only seems to be the first couple of dinosaurs that aren't working. The rest still seem to be moving. They've still got life in them yet. Despite that, it is still a really fun ride, and I would encourage you to go on it every time the queue is low. And I would do so now whilst you still can, because Disney announced a while back that they're planning on replacing Dinoland, which unfortunately means sometime this year they will be transforming this ride into an Indiana Jones attraction. And I, for one, will be really sad to see this ride go. All they really needed to do was replace a couple of the animatronics, and this ride was good to go for another 15 to 20 years. And despite some of the animatronics not working, it's still a really popular ride in the Animal Kingdom, and I know lots of people besides myself will be disappointed to see it go. So, hopefully Disney's plans to redo the whole area get delayed and won't happen for a while. Or, better yet, they redo the rest of Dinoland, which is actually in major need of an update, and leave the dinosaur ride as is. It might seem a bit random sitting in the corner of a Moana-themed area, but I won't mind, I swear. Please? Disney, please? Disney, please, if you're listening, don't take this ride away from me. Earlier, I mentioned Animal Kingdom had my favorite Disney dark ride. It also has one of my favorite Disney roller coasters, which we decided to go on next. It was time for Expedition Everest. So, Magic Kingdom has its Thunder Mountain, Space Mountain, Splash Mountain, RIP. But they all fall short in comparison to the mountain. Those mountains lead you into a false sense of what this roller coaster is capable of. It takes you high up into the snowy peaks, high enough that you can see the Tower of Terror in Hollywood Studios. And then it takes you down and winds you around until you come to an abrupt stop, because ahead of you is a broken track. Torn track. Track ripped off the mountain. But by whom? Or what? Or whom? Well, beforehand, when you're in the queue for this ride, you're taken through a museum that holds supposed evidence of a Yeti. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is another example of a well-designed queue. The queue tells a story and gives hints as to what you are to expect on this ride, which adds excitement and anticipation whilst waiting in the queue. And on top of that, whilst it can sometimes be a long wait time, the queue moves. And because there's lots to look at whilst you're moving, time seems to fly by. And before you know it, you're already close to the boarding platform. It's just good practical sense to have a well-themed queue, and better yet, have a queue that moves. And the ride itself? Well, to put it plainly, it's fun. High speeds, big drops, complete darkness, backwards whilst in complete darkness, projections of a Yeti coming after you, a real Yeti coming after you. Yeah, it's a good time. Make sure you ride this when you come to Animal Kingdom, because whilst it's intense, it's not so intense that you can't bring your kids on it too. This ride is pretty accessible. And again, it's fun. So much fun that we went on it again, and again, and again, and again. I can't recommend it enough. Go ride it. Now, in terms of intense rides, that's kind of it for Animal Kingdom. There is also a river rapids, which is kind of good, but I found it a bit short. Water rides are always welcomed in Florida heat, and I've always found river rapids fun. We have one or two back in the UK. The one in Alton Towers, however, is designed in a way where you're not going to get too wet. Because the difference is, getting really wet on a ride in Florida means you get nicely cooled down and slowly dry off for the next few hours. Getting really wet in the UK means getting hypothermia. This is why I love going on water rides when on holiday, because that's the only time I get to go on them without risking my health. The river rapids in Animal Kingdom is pretty fun, but we found it's a lot better when all the seats in the raft are full, because the more weight in the raft means more momentum, which means bigger splashes. I found there was a lot of build up for river rapids as you spend a while going up whilst listening to jungle drums being played around you. This is shortly followed by a massive drop, which was really good. It goes on for a little bit after that and, oh, it ends. It just felt a little bit anticlimactic. It's still a fun ride, and it's almost necessary to cool down in the Florida heat. Speaking on behalf of the people of Scotland and the rest of the UK, the heat can at times feel unbearable. Luckily, there's lots of shade to find in the parks, especially in the queues, or at least most of them. My word of advice is if you're used to colder temperatures, ride every water ride in sight. You'll soon be counting them as blessings. Also, drink lots of water. As I said earlier, you'll find a number of water fountains throughout the parks and in a lot of lines for the rides. I cannot emphasize how important it is to stay hydrated in this heat.
Yeah.
I believe the last thing we went on in Animal Kingdom that day was the safari. I have yet to touch on the other reason I really enjoyed this park, which is strange that I haven't mentioned it yet, as it is in the name of the park. The animals! They have a lot of animals in this park, all different shapes, colours, sizes, smell, and derpiness. And a lot of them can be seen on the safari. They have giraffes, rhinos, elephants, Mufasa, the guys that killed Mufasa, ostriches, a female lion, damn it I missed it! They have them all! And that's just on the safari. They have a lot more animals throughout the park. We didn't have time to see them all on our first day there, so we left that for another day. So after riding Everest and Dinosaur a couple more times, we decided to make our way back to the Airbnb. And whilst I loved my time in Animal Kingdom, we were now finally approaching the big event of the trip. One of the main reasons we decided to come to Florida in the first place. And I think you all know what I'm talking about. The Rainforest Cafe. Unfortunately, it was fully booked, so we got a Taco Bell instead and headed back to the Airbnb, and tried our best to get to sleep in preparation for what we were anticipating to be one of the biggest events of the trip. The greatest ride of all time awaited us.
Nick, film me.
Let me get the good shot first.
Nick, film me. Floating islands. Floating memories. Come on. Just hear a Pandora. Stop filming me.